Hello and welcome to Breaking Bread with Rivaaj Maharaj, where nothing is off the table. For today's episode, I want to talk about the breaking news coming in on X and the viral comments made by German Chancellor Friedrich Merz regarding the recent negotiation talks held in Pakistan between Iran and the United States. So without further ado, let's get into it. BRICS News has just put in a post on X, German Chancellor Merz says US and Iran negotiations in Pakistan were not well prepared. I was not surprised by the decision to break off the talks. From the very beginning, I didn't get the impression that they were really well prepared. As you can imagine, this is causing a flurry of responses and, for and against. However, if you look at what is going on, the pushback now from the Germans, the pushback from the British, the pushback from the French. Macron at the beginning was really, vocal, but Starmer was more muted. The Germans were not as vociferous as the French in condemning what was going on, but they sat on the sideline. The Spanish, of course, they are the Spanish under Pedro Sanchez. I'll just say it's a one-way ticket to Looney Town. Nevertheless, you find that there's an emboldenedness coming out of the EU. And let's look at what could be driving this. There are two things, I believe. Firstly, the failure of the talks within Islamabad to bring about a negotiated settlement. So that means that the war is still ongoing and Europe feels it has a foot in the door now, if you want, to try and get some relevance again. Because remember, up until the negotiations were being held and Europe was being sidelined from those negotiations because of the stance it took against Trump regarding the Strait of Hormuz and the refusal to help police the strait, the Europeans were sidelined. The Europeans and the UK were sidelined. Then Starmer made the frantic trip to the Gulf nations, embarrassing the British nation, trying to go and play power politics way out of his depth, and made an ass of himself. You now find that because the negotiations were not successful, and I suspect that the Europeans are really excited at the prospect that it was not successful, because they now look at this as an opportunity for them to try and bring about some sort of relevance to themselves. And this is where you find this emboldenedness creeping in, because they sense a division and they feel that they can exploit it. The other thing is that you had Viktor Orban lose the election in Hungary. The European Union, for some reason, seemed to believe that Peter Magyar coming in is going to be a boon for the European Union. And as I said in my video on the Hungarian election, I think we need to see what Peter Magyar does as opposed to what he says, in order to gauge where Hungary is heading. But that defeat of Orban has emboldened the European Union, because they were impotent up until Orban was in power, because he played politics within the EU, which sometimes made the EU look really, really incapable. You now have those two events that have taken place, and suddenly the Germans have got a spring in their step. Starmer is, coming out now hammer and tongs against Donald Trump, the American administration, and Starmer is trying to assert himself. I fear it's a little too much, a little too late. But again, you've got this comment from Friedrich Merz, and in a way he is right. There is nothing positive that would have come out from these talks. Number one, the venue for the talks was Pakistan. While Pakistan was a conduit because of its relationship with Iran and its geographical relationship as well with Iran and its duplicitous relationship it has with the United States, while that could have been seen as a starting point, there is nothing more that the Pakistanis had to offer. They had no leverage. So they couldn't sit the two parties down at the table and say to them, You are here to iron out a negotiated settlement. And if things were going in a way that Pakistan saw nothing was going to be achieved, they could have then asserted some sort of control. They had nothing in terms of control that they could assert on either party. They had nothing that they could have even went to the Iranians and said, listen, do this, otherwise that. It's impossible. They have nothing. There's no leverage there. So that straight off the bat is a disaster. Then you've got the Americans and the Iranians who are coming at these talks from two remotely distant parts. There's going to be no meetings of the mind. Absolutely none. So the Pakistanis should have done better homework, sat down and, analyzed what it is that both were saying before they jumped into bed with these two parties to try and get a negotiated settlement sorted out. Because they did not do their homework on their side as well. And from a lot of the back and forth that was going on Twitter, on X over the weekend, it also seemed that, I had come across some articles where the Iranians appeared to have been upset with the Pakistanis. And it seemed that the Pakistanis were picking and choosing how the information between the two sides were being relayed. Remember, Pakistan was the conduit. And from what I've been gathering, the Iranians were terribly upset with the Pakistanis because of the duplicitous nature in which some of that information was being transferred between the two parties. So the Iranians felt that there was a bit of double dealing going on. And, the Pakistanis should have sat down with the Americans and said, listen, what is your red line? And they should have done the same thing with the Iranians and then seen how they could have bridged that gap. I suspect they didn't, because the Iranians, J.D. Vance said they agreed on a lot of things, but the crucial point that they could not agree on, and that is the point that Pakistan should have focused on entirely. But needless to say, the negotiations didn't work, and the Germans are now coming out and hammering all parties concerned to these negotiations. So let's see how this goes forward, because the divide between Europe, the UK, and the United States has now grown exponentially bigger. So we're going to keep an eye on this, and we're going to keep you updated. I want to thank you for spending time with us. We look forward to seeing you in the next episode, and please remember to like, share, and subscribe, as it helps us with the algorithm and it helps our channel to grow.